Welcome to the State of Accessibility podcast, episode 13 from TPGI on LinkedIn Live. I'm David Sloan, Chief Accessibility Officer for Vispero, and I'm joined this month by TPGI's Principal Accessible User Experience Consultant, Dave Swallow. Welcome, Dave. Would you like to share a bit about your accessibility journey as an introduction?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. I listen to plenty of podcasts, but I haven't been on that many, and certainly not live podcasts. So I'll try and do my best to remain coherent. So I'm David Swallow. I'm principal UX consultant in the UX practice. I lead on various UX services here, like usability testing, user flow testing, strategy work, design reviews, high-level reviews, kiosk work, as well as general consultancy. I've been with TPGI for just over 9 years now, this month, in fact. And I'm based in York in the UK. As for my accessibility journey, it's quite a long one. I did my undergraduate degree in psychology, where I specialized in human-computer interaction, which, as the name suggests, is the study of how humans interact with computers and technology. I then did a master's degree in computer science, where again I ended up specializing in human-computer interaction. This time more from the technology side of things. I then worked as a web developer for a few years, creating websites for estate agents and realtors, most of which have now fallen off the web. I then went back to academia to work as a researcher in human-computer interaction at the University of York in the UK. And that was where I really got into accessibility. And I worked on a range of research projects with partners across Europe, all with a focus on developing technologies to support disabled and older people. And it was during this time that I met you, as you were also working in academia. And I achieved there a PhD in computer science there, looking at how to integrate accessible web development practices into the workflows of professional web developers. And that was a sort of an attempt to bring together my various strands of experience, really. And then after almost a decade of working in academia, I decided to make the leap to industry and joined what was the Paciello Group, now TPGI, in 2016. And yeah, never looked back.
Yeah, time flies. We have a remarkably similar kind of career pathway into accessibility, but I just want to emphasize we are not the same person. We have similar
Yes,
similar backgrounds, but we're definitely not the same person. Which
finally an opportunity to
yes,
to demonstrate that we're two different people. This isn't AI generated.
So the one thing I kind of wish I'd done back in the day, if I could have my career over again, was do the undergrad course in psychology, because I think it's so important to what we do is understanding how people think and behave and anticipating for that, and including how the diversity of the ways that people think and behave. And I know you've been involved in the W3C effort in cognitive accessibility, and we'll come back and talk about that later on in the podcast. But for now, September, it's been a really big month for really high quality events on aspects of digital accessibility, like especially virtual events. Last week was WebAIM's annual conference. Again, some really good speakers talking about all different aspects of accessibility. And this week is the latest annual edition of Inclusive Design 24. So we're going to talk a little bit more about ID 24 and some other and currently happening events in the accessibility space. So let's chat a bit more about ID 24. And you're pretty heavily involved in ID24 this year. Could you tell us more about the conference, especially for people who might not be aware of why it's unique, its history and how it's different to other events?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so inclusive design 24, hashtag ID24. It's a free 24-hour online event for the global community, and it celebrates inclusive design and shares knowledge and ideas. In their words, from analog to digital, from design to development, from planners to practitioners, and everything and everyone in between. So essentially, an online conference, really, with expert speakers from across the globe sharing their knowledge for free to the community. I understand it was Leonie Watson who first came up with the idea and the name Inclusive Design 24. That was back in 2011, and it didn't really become a reality until 2014 when Carl Groves had a similar idea. He was also working with Leonie at the Paciello Group, and then Mike Paciello offered to support that first event, that first conference, which, from what I gather, was put together quite hastily. I don't know if you were at the TBG at the time, Dave.
Yeah, I think I was on a plane for most of the first one, but I definitely remember the second one. I was in a hotel room in Florence, Italy, with terrible
Ah,
Wi-Fi.
yeah,
But yeah, it kind of it made it, the first one happened successfully and happened
yeah.
successfully enough that everyone thought, let's do it again and figure out ways to improve efficiency, troubleshoot,
Y-
do that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I don't know, something that I think not many people realize now is in those initial days, it was very much a TPG, Pastiello Group event. Looking at the lineup for the first few years, it comprised many TPG engineers, along with, various other industry experts. I know when I first joined TPG in 2016, it was always a big event on the company calendar. In fact, once I got the job at TPG, but before it actually started, I got the job in like the March and started in the September. I was asked if I'd like to speak at that year's event. Um, I was still doing my PhD at the time, so I gave a talk about my research on supporting web developers. So yeah, so it was a bit of a baptism of fire, really, being asked to speak at the company conference essentially before I'd even met any of my colleagues. But it went well, I think. Graham Coleman and Ian Pouncey were the friendly faces hosting my session there. It is still available on YouTube, although I would caution that it's very dated now. It doesn't necessarily reflect what I believe or understand now. But yeah, it was a great experience.
And that's a great observation that all the talks are all on YouTube. I mean, I guess it's something that a lot of events do is, you're there, you experience it in person, but if you're not, you can go back and check the archives and so that
Absolutely.
anything you miss. And I think it's worth sort of exploring the 24. So we're talking about 24 consecutive sessions in a day. Talk through how that happens and how.
Yeah, with a lot of organization. That's what it takes. A lot of stress. Um, yeah, so the intention is that they could share knowledge and ideas without the barriers of a traditional conference. So no travel and the cost of a conference, and accessibility barriers as well. And so yeah, it it takes a lot of doing, but I think that's one of its absolute strengths, that it brings together such a diverse audience, really, in terms of accessibility representation and geography. Yeah, yeah. So because it takes place in that 24-hour continuous block, it can, well, it needs to source speakers from across a range of time zones. And it'll usually kick off with Australia and New Zealand at the start of it, and just work its way around the globe, really. Which, yeah, can be quite a challenge, I understand, in terms of scheduling all that, making sure people are available, and following. They use UTC. Is that what's it? Universal Time? Don't know. Universal Time Constant?
I looked it up, yeah.
Yeah.
So so yeah, I mean it's kind of it starts but I'm in on Eastern time and it starts at 8 o'clock on Wednesday evening of the 24th. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a full day on Thursday the 25th if your time zone is UTC. So I think that means 1 a.m. UK time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So
Um,
it's normally just
and I'm
starting as
trying to
I'm
think
going
maybe
to bed.
Iceland is UTC at the minute. It's a
Ah,
it's a real UX challenge to see
yeah.
when the event starts and finishes and when each session starts. And I'm sure there's plenty of people who've showed up 1 hour late for the session that they're
Oh,
really
yeah.
interested in
Yeah.
in attending. As long as the speakers are there, that's okay. But
Yeah.
but again, they're on YouTube, so you can catch up afterwards. And I think if you go to the website, inclusivedesign24.org, it localizes the times of each session to your time zone or this time
Mm.
zone your device is set to. So as long as that's accurate, then you'll get you don't have to convert the times. And again, that makes it more globally friendly rather than you've got to figure out what time zone are they showing the times in, and then what does that mean for me? So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely flexible. So
Yeah.
what about some of the sessions upcoming later this week? Has anything jumped out has been particularly interesting to you?
Yeah. So, well, I've hosted um, some of the sessions in previous
Mhm,
years on a
mhm.
couple of occasions, which it's also a great experience. And this year, the team have kindly invited me back. So I'm going to be hosting two sessions in the morning, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. UTC, which will be the middle of the night for our US audience. But of course, as I say, the sessions are available on YouTube to watch whenever. So I'll just promote my my two sessions. So my first session is by Sergey, I think it's Krieger, who describes himself as a front-end developer, web accessibility specialist, and occasional public speaker. And he'll be speaking about what comes next after reporting an accessibility problem, answering the question, found an accessibility issue, now what? I think it's looking into, how you communicate that through to development and track the progress of those issues. So that should be interesting. And then my second hosting session is by Kay Moores, who's the MD of Drum Studios. And she'll be looking at how to get stakeholder buy-in to inclusive design, sharing some quick, low-budget accessibility fixes to make UX more inclusive and helping to avoid brain overload, the silent barrier to inclusive design. So that definitely appeals to my interests with cognitive accessibility. So yeah, I'm looking forward to both of those. Beyond that, and on a similar theme, I'm looking forward to a session by Piper Hudson on designing neuro-accessible interfaces for better user engagement. So Piper's going to be exploring how cognitive load theory can inform the design of digital tools to support a wider range of users, and sharing some ways to reduce cognitive overload. I'm really interested in this one because the cognitive overload seems to be key to just so many issues in the cognitive space. I've done some of my own research on anxiety and panic disorders and also memory, and that it just keeps cropping up time and time again
Mhm.
as a factor in those. So yeah, so I'm really keen to see what Piper recommends there. Um, the BBC always has a lot of useful insights to share. So I'm going to be tuning into Andy Ronkley's talk on embedding accessibility into the next generation of BBC apps. So I think the BBC's got quite a uh, unique take on a lot of things when it comes to accessibility. So it'll be good to see how they've embedded accessibility at scale, really, on native apps. And then, of course, the European Accessibility Act is uh, shaping up to have a significant impact on our community. So I'm looking forward to Mark Walker and I'm not sure if it's Lou or Louis Asquith on the European Accessibility Act and what it means for you. So Mark is from AbilityNet consultancy, and Louis is a regulatory and public lawyer. So it'll be good to get just get their take on things, really. So
Definitely.
so
Yeah.
yeah, plenty to look forward to, and plenty I'll be catching up on. Anything
Yeah.
caught your
Yeah.
eye?
Well, I guess I mean, it's really hard to pull out a few, given this, like you say, the diversity of topic, the diversity of speaker, the diversity of background and geographical location, everything's of interest. So then it's like, how do you possibly pick something out? So I I did it. I picked out three that I'm particularly interested in. One is by Jan Martin and Daniel Henderson Eid
Mm,
on accessibility annotations around the world. And it was something you talked about earlier about communication and accessibility annotations, as in providing information on a visual design to help developers implement that design accessibly in code. Is something that can be a challenge. I mean, if you don't do it, then the chances are then developers are going to implement things in an inaccessible way. But even providing annotations, are you giving people information that they understand and know what to do with? So
mm,
this talk is going to talk about annotations as this kind of dialogue between design development in a shared language if it's going if the annotations are going to be successful.
mm,
And I'd also just read a blog post by Craig Abbott from Tetralogical that came out today or yesterday, maybe, also talking about annotations as something that you need to be able to be speaking in the right language so
mm,
that those
mm,
annotations can communicate. So that sounds like a great session. Another one, Hannah Wagner, Design as Care, Building What Speed Alone Can't Deliver. This is kind of challenging the move fast and break things type approach to
mm,
development, and reframing design as something applying care, thinking about how accessibility can drive design decision making to create something that's resilient, usable and useful, and has long-term value. So that's going to be a really thought-provoking talk, I think, there. And I'll just also give a shout out to Nick Chan's talk on Audium, building inclusive maps as the token-cited
mm,
developer. I've been interested in Audium as a product for a long time, sort of audio map technology. With my background as a cartographer, I'm kind of always
mm,
interested in figuring out ways to make maps more accessible. So talking about audium as a product and innovation is going to be interesting, but also this added spin as somebody presenting on a project where they're the only sighted developer in the product team. So the tables are turned rather than having one person with a disability or one blind person in a team. Here's somebody who's the only sighted person in a team. So it's like
Mm,
the situation is flipped, and I'll
yeah,
be
tables
really
are turned.
interested to hear that experience. So looking forward to that. So
Mm.
yeah, this is all going to happen later this week. Inclusivedesign24.org. Check the website. So wherever you are in the world, you get the times right. I know, we talked about how ID24 was really born of from people who were at TPG, but it's much more of a community effort now, and I'm super grateful to all the organizers and everyone else who makes it happen, and of course, obviously the speakers who pitch talks and are prepared to present, maybe in some cases in slightly awkward times of the day, but in other cases, the great time for them, even if I should be in bed sleeping at that time. So good luck to you and to everyone else involved in ID24 this year. I'm sure it's going to be great.
Looking
So
forward to
yeah,
it.
we talked about ID24, but you and I were both at a webinar last Friday on European Accessibility Act, and we heard Susanna Lauren from Funka Foundation talking about a 3 months on. We got some interesting stuff from that website. Do you want to share a couple of highlights from
Yeah,
you?
yeah. It was an interesting session. It was tucked away as one of the Funk Foundation's free Friday webinar series. Obviously, Susanna's very well connected with the European Commission and all things EAA at the moment, so it was really good to get an insider perspective there. Um, I was glad that she addressed the anticlimax or sense of anticlimax that after the June 28th implementation deadline this year, pointing out that nothing happened that weekend. And I'm not sure what people were expecting to happen. Maybe suddenly everything would be fixed and perfectly accessible. Fireworks. I don't know. I don't know. Um, but yeah, I think it was good to stress that this is only the start of the journey rather than the end. Or maybe not the start. I don't know, the base camp or something. I don't know.
Mm,
Yeah, there's a lot more to come. Um, that said, I do feel like a bit of momentum has been lost, but we'll perhaps come on to why that might be. Um, so yeah, Susanna described emerging trends in a number of areas. People with disabilities, she said, end users with disabilities are actively filing complaints in many member states, and there's been a much higher volume of individual complaints than the ones from organisations, suggesting a stronger consumer awareness. Some
and
countries are
that's a really
sharing.
interesting point, that there has been in complaints. We don't maybe hear so
Yeah,
much about
it's
that,
great
but
to
there
hear.
have been complaints already. So that's evidence in and of its own that it's having an effect, and people are asserting their rights to access to accessible consumer products and services.
Absolutely, yeah. She also mentioned the competent authorities. So these are the national bodies in each EU member state that are responsible for enforcing the EAA's requirements. Um, and I got the impression that this was very mixed, and I've had this impression for a while actually. Um, in many of the member states, it hasn't properly gotten off the ground yet, and the authorities are still hiring staff and developing process. Um, and I think this is one of the things that's feeding that lack of momentum that I mentioned. If the competent authorities are not in place, and that's not already, and the surveillance authorities are not up and running, I fear it gives the impression that there's no urgency. There's no compulsion to make things accessible yet. And I know the whole thing has been a, a huge undertaking, no denying that. But I think you've really got quite a small window of opportunity to manage expectations there. So I hope they make more progress with that. And then the accessibility industry, and that was where Susanna said they've seen the biggest area of change with a recognition that EAA goes beyond websites and apps and includes, training and test procedures and just broader support in general.
Mhm.
But it's where there's also a number of ongoing issues, like missing technical standards, limited clarity on reporting obligations, variability in the national requirements. It's just feeding this sense of confusion and misinformation. Um, and I think that was one of the sort of big takeaways for me. Um, I mean, Susanna mentioned that I think some expensive consultancies were from outside the EU were peddling incorrect information, not intentionally, but yeah. And her advice there was that organizations need to rely on trusted, respected sources and official organizations rather than guesswork, essentially. Um, I think you mentioned the same, didn't you? With that we've seen blog posts and social media posts
Yeah,
that are not quite
yeah. I guess
accurate.
it's that when you're talking about the lack of progress from the competent authorities in clearly articulating and together articulating this is what needs to happen. I think the fact that there is still no official definitive list of all of the competent authorities that do
Mm.
the enforcement across the EU. Who do you go to in Germany? Who do you go to in Austria? Who do you go to in Portugal? Like as a single page. And I think there are community efforts to try and fill that gap, but really that's something that the European Commission should be doing. So without that, then people start to fill in the gaps. And as you
Yeah.
say, there's a worry that people turn an interpretation into something, you must do this, and that becomes something that's inaccurate, but then it gets kind of amplified. And the worst case is when you must do this, and oh, by the way, we have a tool that helps you do that, and you can
Mhm.
pay that. That's where things get more complicated. But yeah, it's
Yeah. People are
definitely
just trying to fill that vacuum, aren't they?
right, right,
It's not with bad intent,
right.
most of the time. But yeah, I mean the legal text of the AA is complex. It's difficult to interpret. That's a barrier. The updated technical standards like the new EN 301 519 still haven't been published. As Susanna mentioned, the reporting templates haven't been provided. And yeah, the surveillance authorities aren't fully up and running yet. So I don't know. It's easy to criticize people for spreading misinformation. But the European Commission itself hasn't provided enough clear, practical guidance to plug the gap,
Yeah,
in my
and I
opinion.
guess the thing for us in providing accessibility information and support is just read things twice, three times before saying this is
Yeah.
what you need to do, and just be very careful about talking about what is required. You've got clear accessibility requirements, and then
Mm.
you've got the things that they apply to. So it's just been really careful about interpreting, not making leaps to say it applies to every website, for instance, or every company in this country or that country or whatever. I guess one good thing is that it seems like Ian through 1549 has stabilized, so we don't, the latest draft, we don't
Mm.
expect to see any changes in the requirements for meeting that standard. So, even though it's not published, you can find the latest draft that should be stabilized and something that you can maybe start to reference in design and development work.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Point to yeah, credible sources where, wherever possible.
Yeah.
And hopefully, like you say, the commission will provide that centralized list of the competent authorities. So people have got something to turn to. But yeah, until then, it probably will still fall on the community to to fill that. I know noted Eric Eggert has compiled a list of uh, live EAA accessibility statements from companies in Europe, which is a useful resource just to see how companies are doing it,
Yeah.
in lieu of some sort of template there. So yeah, it's just uh, choose your sources carefully. Yeah, I guess. Um, it's going to be the EAA is going to be a huge step forward for accessibility in Europe and beyond, I guess. But
Yeah.
we're in this kind of messy transition period at the moment.
Yeah. So yeah, choose your sources carefully and ask for advice where it's not clear, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and right now there's an event going on commemorating the fifth anniversary of the Web Accessibility Directive in
Yeah, it's his
Europe. So
birthday or publication date of us something. I think it's always around this time that they celebrate this.
yeah, so even more information going on and more information for us to cover in future podcasts. So
Mm.
I know we're almost at time, but I just wanted to sort of finish by sort of share or inviting you to share a little bit about your work with the W3C Cognitive Learning Disabilities Accessibility Task Force, COGA for
Sure.
short. Could you sort of briefly talk a bit more about what the group is doing, how you've been involved?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I'm a member of the W3C's COGA task force. So COGA is cognitive and learning disabilities accessibility, and it's part of the W3C Web Accessibility Initiative. And its whole mission is to make the web more usable for people with cognitive and learning disabilities. So the group looks at the gaps, the places where existing accessibility guidelines like WCAG don't fully cover the needs of people with cognitive and learning differences. They produce resources and practical guidance for designers and developers and content creators. Um, I've done a bit of research myself into anxiety and panic disorders, and also memory issues and how that affects use of the web. So it was just felt a natural fit for me to join COGA. One of their biggest contributions so far is a guide called Making Content Usable for People with Cognitive and Learning Disabilities. Um, this is not a standard like WCAG that you have to meet. It's a companion piece to WCAG that gives extra guidance, and it lays out various design goals like help users understand what things are and how to use them, make navigation consistent and clear, reduce memory load, reduce cognitive load by not making people remember too many things. And there's various design patterns in there as well, and it just encourages teams to include and think about people with cognitive and learning disabilities in their research and their testing. So yeah, so if you're a designer, a developer, project manager, whatever, the Koga task force work it is well worth exploring. I haven't been able to contribute too much to the task force as much this year, just because of work commitments, but I'm hoping that will change soon. Right now, the group's working on the next version of making content usable, which will be published under a new name, I believe, Cognitive Accessibility Guidance, which is a bit easier to say. They're developing white papers. There's one on voice systems and conversational interfaces, looking at wayfinding and indoor navigation. And they're also making sure cognitive accessibility requirements are built into the upcoming WCAG 3 as well. So there's quite a few plates spinning there. So yeah, even though I haven't been as active lately, I would like to encourage listeners to get involved. It's a very welcoming group. They're tackling an area of accessibility that I think often gets overlooked, but is more important than ever. So yeah, I'd really encourage people to look at that.
Yeah, and from my perspective, making content usable is a really valuable document. It kind of connects accessibility and especially standards compliance accessibility with usability and user experience. Again, with cognitive accessibility, so often these are things that people might assume as, well, that's usability, but no, these are things that are essential for some people and useful
Exactly.
for all. Using that way sort of phrase on
Yeah, yeah,
accessibility. So
totally
it's
embodies
it's
that.
it's definitely a valuable resource, and looking forward to seeing what the group produces with the next version.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess we should probably wrap up. So thank you again, Dave, for joining this month's podcast, and
Yeah, thank you for
especially
having me on. It's
good
gone very
luck.
fast.
Good luck for ID24. I hope your coffee maker's been tested and is working well. It's going to be a long day, but definitely worthwhile. Next month's podcast is scheduled for October 16th, so we'll be back then. Now you know the state of accessibility. I'm David Sloan, thanking Dave Swallow and reminding you that the state of accessibility is always changing, so please help us affect change.